get funded, just a sampling to say, these are all the different sorts of things that as a hospital administrator, I have to make decisions on as to which one am I going to fund next year, and it may not be 2 EP labs that need to get replaced, sorts of things. I throw this up here just to I'm not going to go into this in great detail, but just to say, you know, as a physician, as you bring something forward to hospital administration to say, we need to do this or this, do think about, and hopefully you'll have some support to put together a business plan, but these are the sorts of things that as a hospital administrator, I want to see at least bullet pointed out. It doesn't have to be a 20-page business plan, but that there's been thought about, as you want to think about X new technology coming into the EP lab or wherever that might be, these are the sorts of things that we're thinking about. So what is the market analysis? Who else is doing it? How will it help our reputation? We think about the overall cost, again, support that you would have from hospital administration to help put this sort of thing together. But sometimes, you know, I think physicians may say, when I go into the CEO's office and say, I need this, why can't I just get it? These are the sorts of things that as a hospital administrator, I'm going to be looking for when you bring forward that next great $5 million innovative idea that you have. Physician relations, I don't have a lot on this slide, and again, I don't know that we need to spend a lot of time on it necessarily right now, but I do think, you know, as this landscape has changed over time, as more and more cardiologists are employed by hospitals, I don't know whether or not that pendulum will swing back at some time or not. You know, I do a lot of reading on this around alignment and integration and that sort of thing. But I would just say, think about the different ways that you can be aligned with the hospital. So there are a lot of different mechanisms, but not necessarily having to be employed by a hospital, that you still can feel very much aligned and perhaps integrated. So whether that's medical directorships, co-management models. Co-management seems to be something that, you know, the government has loosened up a little bit on co-management relationships and some of the gain sharing deals now that can be done again. And so, you know, how some of that can be structured, joint ventures, all of that. But when there's tension, when there is tension with the hospital, what do we do? And I would say, again, you know, there's probably 7 different ways to slice this. But as a hospital administrator, I want to just sit down and have that open, honest conversation. And so we may have to agree to disagree on something, but I think earlier and often is better. So if you're not having conversations with hospital administration, I would encourage you to do that. You know, make sure that they know every year what it is that you need to get accomplished. What are the changes that your practice is going through? How do you need them to support you? We've got to do this together. Again, my philosophy, I think health systems, I think we need to be physician-led, but that doesn't mean that we do it in isolation. We have to do it together with administration. Thoughts on this or anything that, as a hospital administrator, you'll have questions for me on? Yes.
So, out of the strategies you have written here from your experience, you know, we deal with, so we have a group of physicians who are, like say, ideal would be that everybody is working with the hospital. Co-management dies out in 5 years because the legal comes in and says, hey, you know, you can't keep on doing it. Medical directorships are as good as your relationship with the administrator. If you are not, you know, in working with him, overnight the medical directorship politically disappears or cuts down in terms of capital assessment. So in your view, is the joint venture better, employment model better in the next decade to come? That's the question.
Yeah. I don't know. I think a lot of this will come down to sort of the funds flow models and the way that the dollars can be shared. And I also think it's the relationship side of it. And so the trust in the institution, the trust in the physician group, I think it does come down to money and control, if you will. And so I don't know that there's a silver bullet that is going to be the right one for the next 10 years. I think medical directorships, you know, just that one that, there will oftentimes be, well, why do we need 18 medical directors in the hospital? Can't you just do it with 2? That to me gets back to that accountability and transparency and goal setting. So to be an effective medical director, I think it's not just the payment that you're getting as a medical director, but what is it that you're contributing, and how do we set those goals together? What do you feel accountable for? How do you help us with realistic things that we need to get accomplished this year, but also be that visionary to say, here's where we need to get to. So I don't know that there's one necessarily that I would say that's the one that we should be thinking about. I think it depends on your current situation, and some of it gets down to even state regulations and what can be done within that state and those sorts of things. Is there another question? Yes.
The models have changed over the last 5 years in cardiology, but I don't think the physicians are getting paid any less. I don't have costs. I think the physicians are getting paid more than 5 years ago, and they were the bigs for us to join the hospitals. At least in our private practice, I see that the white physicians pretty much get paid more for less work than in the private position. But now the data says that a private physician makes $22 an RVU, where an employed physician makes $50 an RVU.
Really?
So
I've never seen that data.
most of the time, the physician joining the hospital are actually working half of their eligible money. So then how give that healthcare costs? It's open to discussion.
Yeah.
It's an observation I make as a private physician, is working 4 times to make money.
Sure.
That actually is a phenomenon that we saw. So I've been in private practice for 15 years, and at best, my 5-man group would negotiate a contract that was 120% Medicare. So with all the stars aligning and needing to join an integrated delivery network, we looked to partner, and in our area, it was Sutter Health. And so Sutter Health, because they control Sacramento down to Monterey, 4,000, physicians in excess, they have contracts that are 250, 300 times Medicare. And I only got 120. Now, as an employed physician, I don't get 300%, but if I even got my 120, I'm ahead because now I have no overhead. So you're right, it doesn't do anything to bend the curve. If anything, we're kind of making out. We're still doing same RVU, same volume and all that sort of thing. But there have been newspapers and people have written about this. Same doctor, same office, same test, more expensive. So who didn't see that scenario?
So one of the things which is really, you're talking about making it sustainable and cutting costs. What do you do when the same cardiologist goes out and opens an interventional peripheral lab next to the hospital, and now suddenly this 700 procedures he was doing is now 1,700 outside? So then unless we have a very good trust and a relationship, which you pointed out again and again, that will not happen, that the guy goes out and opens a lab, because that relationship broke down based on, I think, like you can imagine the profitability of 1,700 peripheral procedures done. So the administrators ask, hey, what do you think is the solution? So my advice was pay 5 times the money and buy back that lab. It will be still cost effective. I mean, how do you keep these people engaged? That's the other thing. That's the reason I asked about that question. It's very difficult to keep everybody engaged when the dollar amount is so much, taking it in your lab outside. Same for our generator changes, pacemakers.
Yeah, I think that, sort of competition piece is tough when somebody leads and does that. I would say my first approach to that is typically to say, keep trying to be close, if you will, but in that, are there ways that you can still find ways to collaborate? And so are there other downstreams? Is there surgeries that you could get from that? What is it? I mean, if there's not a way to not have that competition occur within your, sort of the city that you're within, how do you find ways to collaborate somehow?
I think there are a few issues with outpatient labs. One is a financial issue. ethical issue. The guy who's opened the lab, he has a financial incentive in making more. He's busy doing stuff that he should be doing. Nobody's looking. The way we've looked into labs and all that, part of a couple of labs, the whole system is going towards outpatient work. Pretty soon, coronary stents are going to be done outpatient too. There are some hospitals, I know in South Florida, and some insurance plans are paying for it, where patients are going home the same evening. And you know that, any interventionist knows that 99 times out of 100, we don't need to keep a patient overnight. As long as the access site is okay, in days of second, third generation stents, then we don't need to keep these patients. And very often, before you leave the lab, you know that your result was suboptimal. You were somewhat reluctant in sending that patient home. Those are few patients, probably 2 out of 100 or probably even less than that. So the whole system is going towards outpatient care. More and more labs are opening. The cost of doing a peripheral case in an outpatient lab may be, to the system, maybe $10,000 or $11,000, $12,000. Inpatient is close to $20,000, $30,000. And some of the billings on the charge master are ridiculous. I mean, we're talking of $100,000, $200,000 being charged. So that's a separate issue. The other issue is a guy overusing it. So there is no monitoring system, and that needs to be created where, and there are instances in Ocala, for example, in Florida, there was this gentleman who had his own outpatient lab, and he billed Medicare $17 million. It's just because he was doing unnecessary stuff and there was nobody looking at it. So we have bad apples that we need to police within ourselves, and maybe we don't have a good way of doing it in this outpatient lab setting. But more and more stuff is going outpatient. There's a sudden surge all over the country to open more of these labs. There are hedge funds and financial guys that want to partner with doctors and all that. This is a trend coming, and maybe it's not that bad for the country and for healthcare.
Segue into that is that outpatient labs are very cost efficient. I've seen how very structurally minimizing their overhead and costs consciously and efficiently, bringing it down. Whereas the hospital system has got so much redundancy that it cannot contain that. They cannot achieve that physically. And the other issues, the systems that are buying up. We have another hospital system in our area too, in Louisiana, Ochsner Health. They're in this mode of expanding all over, almost every county like Ohio Health did. Their premise to that is, same thing with the stress test that came out. They want to buy the labs, they can attach their name to it, and then you put a billing towards the hospital system. The cost of a stress test goes up 3 times in a system was supposed to a primary individual clinic. At some point, they know that they're not making money on the physicians from their revenues they're producing from the clinics and all. There's a lot of indirect costs. Everybody says that the primary care physicians are not making money, they lose money on that. Like somebody mentioned, half the time they're more relaxed and less productive, perhaps more vacations or whatever. The pendulum at some point has to swing back out. It cannot sustain itself.
I couldn't agree more, and I do think this, I think we're probably all getting tired of hearing it, but I do think this whole volume to value equation, I think that's what we've all got to drive towards. Just doing more and more and more, and thinking that we're going to continue to get paid for it is just not the way that healthcare is headed, nor should it be. I mean, it's just, that's not the best thing for our patients necessarily. So somehow we do have to really think about this volume to value equation and how we, as the providers, really drive that. Yeah. Is there another? Yes.
Just echoing what Dr. Tamboli said here, having run a freestanding authorization lab for 20 years, we clearly have a system where the cost to the payers is approximately 25% of what they pay the hospitals. The net to the doctors who are doing the catheterizations is approximately 300% of what they get doing the same procedure in outpatient in the hospital. It does require oversight, but if we're looking at costs to the systems as a whole, it's things that Dr. Rose was talking about, there's just no comparison.
No, you're right, and there, there's a, like anything, right, there's a balance in this. So I can tell you at Ohio State, and I think probably most academic medical centers, we spend a lot of time talking to the payers about the cost of having that third mission around education. And so when we have 1,200 residents that sit on the hospital books, how do we pay for those residents, is one piece of it. And so we've been challenged. I mean, the market basket within the state of Ohio this year for inpatient care is going to go down by 2%. Our dish payment, the disproportionate share, which is really what we use for our GME dollars and those sorts of things, that is drastically being cut back. So somebody said it's going to come down at some point. I don't think one's going to go up and the other's going to come down. I think we're going to go down, and I think hospitals have got to start to prepare for that. And as we tease out constantly, what does it cost to take care of this ET patient? As we start to tear back those costs, and that forces us to say, can we do without this, or do we need more of this, but we're going to offset it over here in some other way? It's tough. This is just quickly here, I mentioned this, but again, that's sort of the worst case scenario, so we have a sentinel event in the heart hospital. These are the sorts of things that as a hospital administrator that I'm looking at. And so, as a physician, you may be asked sometimes, sort of a lot of questions if there is some untoward event or something that happens, but just as a reminder, these are the things that I think about. And so I think about training. Did we train people the right way? Did we have the adequate amount of training and the right amount of time and those sorts of things? Was it around an individual performance issue, or is this something that could have happened to any of our providers? What standards of care did we have in place? Did we have enough staff? All of those sorts of things. But this is just, when I think about quality, these are all the different elements that I take into perspective when we look at things. Shifting gears a little bit here, this is just the way that at Ohio State that we undertook probably 3 or 4 years ago what we call operations councils. And so this is a triad of leadership when we have sort of operational, day-to-day policies, procedures, things that need to be put together. This is the way that we've organized it at Ohio State, led by a physician and supported by a nurse and an administrator. And then really the grassroots folks are the ones that populate these operations councils. And so that's how we do things, whether it be length of stay improvements or quality enhancements, throughput initiatives. One of these councils was the one that came forward with the recommendation to put the 2 NPs down in the emergency department. So that's where, again, sort of at the grassroots level, this is how we're getting some of the work done. This is where we're headed. So we are still pretty volume driven and work too much in silos. I think we're sort of midway into this moving towards quality driven around value-based reimbursement, focusing on prevention, personalized health, all of those things around bundled payments and shared savings. So that's our ideal of where we want to get to be, but this is sort of the timeline that we're on at Ohio State. And then I'll just finish up here. So this is just a way just to sort of show you how we hold one another accountable and are pretty transparent with the different goals that we have. So this side of the slide are the health system metrics that we have, and then this side talks specifically about the Ross Heart Hospital. So again, cascading these to say, okay, the medical center overall around our strategic priority, talent and culture. So what are we doing from a people standpoint? So you can see the Med Center overall engagement score. So we had a target to be at 4.15. This is a Likert scale 1 to 5. The Med Center for the staff, we were 4.11. Our faculty, 3.84, 29th percentile. There's a lot of work going on right now around faculty engagement, because I don't think anybody was pleased to see that the physicians were sitting in the 29th percentile there. And then you can see specifically within the Ross, we were at 4.07 and had a goal of 4.15. So it just goes through all of those. So turnover rate, our overall Goal there was 13.3%, Med Center 11%, and the Heart Hospital 10.4%. Healthcare delivery as a strategic priority, so way too many metrics in this one. This is one where every year we say we need to cut down the number of metrics that we have in this healthcare delivery bucket. But you can see again sort of how it goes from the health system scorecard to what the Heart Hospital specifically needs to be doing. And then resource stewardship, that's our financial strategic priority there. And so you can see again how that cascades over. Healthy communities, this was a new strategic priority for us this year, where we said we really need to be thinking more and more about healthy communities and out and about and how we're engaging with regional facilities and all. And then research and education, those are the last two strategic priorities. I'll flip forward here and show you then, so then each one of the departments, so you can see now this goes down to the EP lab. So Steve Cobflush as the physician leader, and then the nurse manager and the administrator responsible for that. So you can see again, same strategic priorities. So the people bucket, healthcare delivery. So then when we get together at our monthly Heart and Vascular Executive Committee meetings, Steve Cobflush comes forward and he presents the EP scorecard. And we talk about, you know, how are we doing in that? How can we better support you? What do you need to move it from red to green and those sorts of